Okay, good. So a little bit of history. Technology is started in Sweden, actually, back in the early 80s. Um, and it was brought to BC by the BC Western Tree Seeds in a as a commercial opportunity for nurseries to improve the germination of the seed lots. And then imagine many of you be familiar with Kim Creasy. He brought it to Ontario and he refined the protocols and the equipment, and we're actually still using his equipment today. Um, and he eventually sold it to the Hafen Brothers Forestry Services, which is still the parent company of Seedtek. Um, and it was run for a few years out of one of the owner's basements, and then it's was moved to this facility, which is it's a lab, but it's in a little old house, so it's not really doesn't feel that lab-like. Um, so some of the benefits of upgrading our seeds are everything in the process actually gets fully stratified. So it's when it goes to the grower, it's ready to grow. Um, and things are more consistent, more even germination, and less seed waste. There's less need for double or triple sowing, less thinning costs. Um, Most of the seed that comes through us does go directly to a grower, but sometimes if people have a large lot in the storage that doesn't have very good germination, they'll often we do this in the off-peak season. They can send it all here, we can upgrade it, and then a lot of the seed is removed, the excess seed is removed, and then dried back down for storage, and then it can go back into the facility. So it's a bit cheaper to store it that way. So just overall increased efficiency in the growing process. The steps, I'll just go through the steps and then we'll go through more detail. So we do the pre-vac, which is a pressure vacuum, and then we soak the seed, stratify it for however many weeks it needs to be stratified. And then we do the main upgrade portion, which is called the IDS. And so that's incubation, drying, and then separation. And then if everything's tested after that, and then we dry it either back to roughly 15% moisture content for shipping to a grower, or back down for storage moisture content around 5%. So the pre-vac, I don't have pictures of actual equipment for this, but we take the dry seed and it goes into a pretty big container, mixed with water, and then we put a vacuum, seal it up, and with a pressure vacuum, um, creates a negative pressure. And so what it does is it forces water into the seed and the debris. So it causes damaged seeds to absorb a lot of water and they become heavy. And not all debris, but there's a fair amount of the debris will also soak up that water and it makes them heavy. And so we take this container, we pour it into another container with a valve on the bottom, and mix it with more water. And in this case, everything that stinks, we remove. And so this is an example of what might come out of a lot. The sap comes out and some seed and some of the debris. So that part is just we um, do a moisture content or a test on that just to sort of see what percentage of the lot has been removed. But then it's just discarded. And then the good seed moves on to the next level, which is the soaking and stratifying. In this pre-vac, generally not a lot of comes out. It's like maybe 1 to 5% for most lots, unless it's a really, really low germination. We might get, 10 to 20% might come out in this part of the process. And then this is this is where the magic happens, the IDS. And so once the seed is fully stratified, and then actually I'll just read a little quote from Simak and from Sweden who created it. And it says the principle that water imbibed by live seeds is lost at a slower rate than water imbibed by dead seeds when both are subjected to uniform drying conditions. So what we're trying to do here is well, the next sentence is the seeds can then be separated in a liquid medium in that way. And in that case, the good seeds will sink. No, sorry. Yeah, the good seeds will sink in this case, and then the non-viable seeds and light debris will float. So when we take it out of either the bags or the tubes that they're being stratified in, we put them into mesh bags and give them a rinse, and then they go back into the fridge for just an overnight, just to stabilize in case there's any pockets of that were too wet or too dry, and just make it sort of even moisture throughout the lot. And then we start putting it on the dryer, just for a couple minutes at a time. And just as an example, say we have a lot that's at 80% germ. So then we would be looking to remove 20% as an ideal. We're trying to, we never get to 100%, but that's what we aim for. And so we'll dry it a little bit, and then we take samples out, 100 seeds, 2 samples of 100 seeds, and then we put them in water and stir them up and see how many sink and how many float. And so we're basically wanting to get to a point where, say, 20 seeds in that lot would float. And then we take those, scoop those off, and we do a cut test to see if they're alive or dead. And so we'll keep doing that process until we get that either the 20 seeds will float, or if we start to see viable seeds floating, then we know that we're going to stop there because we don't want to lose a lot of viable seeds. So it's basically based on density, and it's just that healthy seeds will hold on to their water longer, and the non-viable or dead seeds will float sooner. So then if it's a big lot, it will go into this thing we call a flume. And this whole tank gets filled up with water, and it's pumped around in a clockwise motion. Let's see if I can find my arrow here. So it goes along here and then down here and then up in here. So it's constantly rotating through there. And the seed goes up here and it comes through and it gets mixed with water here, so there's no air pockets or anything, and it comes down. And if it's a good healthy seed, it's going to sink right away into this first spot here. If it's a dead seed, it will float to the edge here and it goes down, and there's a bag here that will catch it. And then there'll be some in between, and depending on the species, there'll be more or less that might float down in here. We usually keep these ones here. We would call this one B1 and this one would be called B2. And then anything down here we would just call floaters because it's usually very low germination. And everything's collected into bags and spun out and then tested. And then we dry them back to however much needs to be dried, depending on where it's going. And yeah, so that's the process. Oops, sorry. That's for a larger lot, we would do that. And then if it's a small lot, it would just be put into a cone, and it just can you hear me? Just noticed my microphone was down by my neck. If it's a small one, we just use a cone, and then it's just like good or floaters in that case. So it's a bit simpler. So this is just a few examples of some upgrading results that we've been able to get. This is an older one that I did for a previous slideshow. So you can see the age of the years varies. We'll get seeds sometimes that are 40 years old or more. This first one's the most exceptional one, came from 35 up to 94. The rest of these were in decent shape, and then they were able to get them for red pine especially, and jack pine. It's pretty easy to get them into the mid to high 90s. The upgrade method, we used to call like the DSP was just the smaller version of the IDS, but now we just call it upgrade. And then if it's sort of in this a decent spot, but if they want to try and get it over 95, then we can just do the pre-vac, and that usually is enough just to bring it up over to the 95 or plus rate. This is our red pine results from last year. I'm new to making these charts, so I'd like to know if they're helpful or not. Um, so with red pine, yeah, so most of them were able to get up into the mid to high 90s. Occasionally there's exceptions, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but why that sometimes happens. But generally, good results with red pine. White spruce, I'd say, is our most challenging species that we work with as far as conifers go. We can always get improvement, but it does seem to be a little less predictable. Um, but yeah, these ones here, were fairly low and able to get them up, most of them into a decent range, but a couple of them, we're only able to get into the 80s there. And this is just last year's results. Again, they're getting mostly into the 90s, 80s to 90s range there. White pine also does fairly well. So, some of these, this one was around 50. We were able to get up to 90 something. Um, and then these ones, again, sometimes we just don't know how bad the lot's going to be, but we were able to get it from 20 to 60s. So I'm not sure how useful that is for growers if who'd be willing to plant it at that rate, but maybe for aerial or something. So jack pine is also another one that does really well generally. So we're able to get into the mid to high 90s relatively consistently with jack pine. I just highlighted these four lots here. We're all from the same giant lot that came up from the States that was in pretty rough shape. We tested each bag separately, and we noticed this particular one had a pretty off smell when we first received the bag. And so it's interesting to see that whatever was causing that smell, I would say was maybe a mold or fungus that the seed maintains its density, but it doesn't necessarily separate the way that a viable seed would. But the germination was still really poor on it. So we do the best we can, but every lot's different. Seeds always keep us guessing. We never know for sure what we're getting into. So yeah, just a list of some exceptions. Like I mentioned, the mold and fungus. Sometimes if we receive a germination number, say for that example, I said 80, we were aiming to get that 20% off, but maybe it turned out it was actually at 65 or something, and we might not take as much off as we would if we'd known that it was at 65. So this is happening more and more. We find that I guess we're getting older seeds. The tests aren't necessarily recent enough. So I am encouraging that we're going to start testing almost all the lots that come in ahead of time, so that we know what we're working with when it comes time to do the upgrade. And some species are a little less predictable, like I mentioned, the white spruce. And then some species just don't respond, basically because of their density is. If they're too light to ever sink or if they're too heavy to ever float. We had a farmer from the States, asparagus farmer, sent some seed up to us a few years ago to try, and the seeds they're almost all like rocks, whether they're viable or not. So yeah, we couldn't get it to work with this process. And like cedar is too light. And so these are some of the ones we just tried in the last few years. Balsam fir, we actually were able to do some benefit even just with the pre-vac at cleaning it up, getting rid of a lot of debris and doing a slight improvement with the germination, but not phenomenal. When we do a an upgrade, this is what we put out a report that we put out afterwards. This was a really good example of the upgrading process at its finest. So we were able to get it from 78 up to 97 with very little loss. With the IDS, it's always just trying to find this balance of getting the best seed, getting the best germination for the good seed as we can without losing too much to the floaters. And that's definitely a balancing act, and it's we try our best, but it's not always this good. I'm just going to show you another one here, if I can minimize this. So this would be another example of a larger lot that would have gone through the flume. So you see here we have the B1s, which would have sunk right at the beginning, the B2s shortly after, and then the floaters were
Oh,
at the end.
Karen, we're still looking at the end of your slideshow.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so I need to share this?
Might need to reshare.
Yeah,
Reshare.
did you select entire screen or did you select a specific window?
I just selected a window.
So yeah, you
That's
may
right.
have to
I
change
see.
the window. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Um, yeah. Okay. You see that now?
Yep.
Yep.
That works. Okay. So this is a report. Thanks for letting me know. A report for a larger um, lot that would have gone through the flume. So there's our B1s, B2s, and floaters. So this was a white spruce that did quite well. It's 69% up to 95. Now sometimes the B1s and B2s are close enough that they'll say just mix them together. Um, Sometimes they're in the 60s or 70s, so that's not recommended. But the floaters here had 29% viability, so there was some loss. If we had tried to get that number lower, then this number would have, ended up being lower. So that's just want to show that there is some loss to the seed. But at 69%, you can kind of expect that you'd want to be losing roughly 30%. Um, you're expected to lose about 30% of your seed. Most of that is going to be non-viable. So, but yeah, I'm not sure how to get back to this, if this is still sharing. Um, okay, so yeah, this is our email, phone number. Our website's been down for a couple of years. It's in our parent company's hands, but we've been pretty full like capacity the last couple of years, so we haven't worried too much about it. But we would do want to get that up soon, and it's got information about how things work and price lists and that kind of thing. So feel free to reach out at any time with questions, and also now if anybody has any questions as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. If you just want to stop sharing your screen and then
Yeah,
we can jump
stop
into
sharing.
any questions if anyone has any.
Got a few there if I can
Hmm.
start.
Yep.
Um, so what are the timelines? Like I think a lot of us will be thinking about our 2026 seedlings now.
Yep.
It's probably too late now, I guess, to try and get the seed upgraded to use for those crops.
It's actually not. Like most people are just starting to send their stuff now. White pine, the length of time it takes depends on the species and how long it needs to be stratified. Um, and so um, I had a so like white pine, we need about 3 months. So depending on when your sow date is, we would need 3 months. White pine or white spruce would be about 6 weeks, and then the jack pine, red pine, black spruce, we'd only need about 4 weeks. And so, and keeping in mind that once it leaves here, it's all the growers need to do is give it a 24-hour soak and it's ready to go. So working back from your sow date, you can sort of see if if there's time in there for that. So,
What did you say it was for? I think you said 6 months for white pine, and how much for
oh,
red pine?
sorry, 3 months for white pine,
Okay.
about 6 weeks for white spruce, and then 4 weeks for red pine, jack pine, and black spruce. And then some people are wanting a longer strat on the white spruce the last couple of years, so that would just add to the amount of time we'd need.
Okay, and then so after the seed's been stratified, it's fine. You dry it down, and then you can put it back into storage. All right.
Yeah, not at 15%, but if it's going back to storage when we dry it or whatever extra you have, we can dry back down to the 4 to 9%, or like five, we just say 5%, but and then that can be returned to storage. The only exception I would say is if you have a lot that's in active decline, like maybe it's got fungus or mold or something in it that you're noticing a very rapid decline. I wouldn't recommend putting that back into storage. I would say, get that sown right away. But if it's fairly stable, then it'll stay stable after the upgrade.
And are most of the time, is it kind of people are using the seed right away, or are they sort of cleaning up their inventory? But probably most of the time, it's kind of going to be used by the nurseries right away.
Yeah, I'd say about 80% is being sown right away.
Mhm.
That said, if there's extra seed in that, someone has a lot that's 5 kilograms, and they only need 2 this year, they might just upgrade it all, use the 2, put the other stuff back in storage. But the last few years, we've had some companies with some really big lots that they want to get dealt with. And we don't have time to do that or space to do that during our peak season, which is kind of like December to May. So we encourage them to send that in the fall.
And what would be the smallest seed lot that you would kind of look at doing? Is there a minimum size?
It's a good question. I feel like we've done some pretty small ones. I'd say 0.5 kilogram. No matter what, like our minimum charge is 1 kilogram, so um, that's the most cost effective to have it a kilogram or more. But as far as the actual process, being able to do it, let's say 0.5 kilogram is probably it gets tricky after that to separate things out. So.
And what would you typically like? Do you have a price list? I'm sure it varies kind of by species.
Yeah, we have a price list. It's pretty standard other than whether it's less than 30-day strat or more. I can send that to Colin and he can send that out to everybody if you like. Yeah.
Okay, that's enough for me there, I think.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Todd. That was great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Karen? Comments?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
Hi, Karen. So what do you guys do? Like if you had an example, a lot that you're working with that did have some sort of mold or fungus or whatever, like what's your cleaning? Like what do you do to sort of clean things before you process in that slot? Do you have a practice?
Like process a different lot, you mean, or that
Yeah.
specific lot? Yeah. Okay, so I mean, well, I should clarify that if we have a lot that's got mold, we do peroxide treatment on it. And that's mostly with white pine. I think with longer strat, we run into that. But yeah, everything else is disinfected with a mild bleach. wipe down and wash. Like all our containers and everything are washed with hot soapy water with bleach in it. Um, and then all the laundry, like the bags and stuff, are washed hot. Um, yeah, that's kind of an area that I'd like to find out what some of the grower, like storage facilities, such are using, but that's what we do at this point.
If there's like a time of year that's the least busy, that if people were to try and make sure that they can, because I'm sure there's times of year, obviously you're full capacity and it'd be harder for somebody to get in, there might be a delay. Like, what's the best times of year if people aren't in a rush, I guess? They
Yeah.
can,
Well, if they are in a rush, if it's a small lot, we can always fit it in somewhere. And we are in the process of looking for, like Haven Brothers is looking to see if we can get funding to um, expand because we're limited. We're in just a little house right now. But yeah, as far as the least busy times would be like September to November, and then also we can usually fit stuff in May, May, June, after like a large portion of it's been sent out. We haven't been doing it in the summer for two reasons. One is because I want to be home with my son, but also it was getting really hot in here. But we do now have an air conditioner, so the equipment is just we're not set up for just the equipment's running hotter and hotter all the time. So we've generally just said we're not going to do anything during the summer. But things like testing, we can do that anytime as well too. So,
Karen, I'm actually curious to know, you had mentioned when talking about cleaning, and if they didn't use seed, do you also handle like the drying back down and storage, or do you just kind of leave that
I-
to?
yeah, we do the drying. We don't do the storage here, and we're not
Okay.
set up for that. But yeah, we can dry it down either to for growing or for storage here, and then just repackage it and send it out. When we ship to the growers, if it's like at 15% roughly moisture content, it goes in a cooler box with ice packs and everything, so it's kept cool. And then they just put it right in the fridge when they get it. So that's
Okay. Thank you.
welcome.
and you're just using moisture content, not water activity or anything like that.
Sorry.
You're just using moisture content, not
Yeah,
water activity for
no, just
moisture.
moisture content. Yeah. And we're using the oven test system for the moisture content. We're looking at maybe some new equipment to have a faster method of that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It's a bit of an expensive upgrade, but it sure is handy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And actually, I think Scott McPherson's on the call here. You can see his name there, but yeah, I'm going to be training him to take over more here. So yeah, hopefully he'll have some skills that I never did quite grasp as far as the technology and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but it's been very interesting. It's been great working with clients, and it's been a lot to learn over the years. Um, it's yeah, it's been good. So cool. Well,
Yeah. Well, thank you,
that's
Karen.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Any other questions from the group or no?
I can
Okay.
uh I can send I can send the price list and our contact information to you, Colin, if you want to
Yeah.
send it out. And
Yeah. That sounds good.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we'll yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye everybody.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Karen.
Karen.
Bye. Bye.
Okay. I guess now we can open it up to some roundtable discussion and address some of the things that were on the agenda. Um, Yeah,
Well,
Kristen.
Colin, I think you were going to go through sort of the next upcoming
Oh,
speakers and meetings.
yes,
Yep.
yes. Yeah, we do have a couple upcoming. In December, we're going to be speaking, or Maureen Jacques from Ferguson Tree Nursery is going to be speaking to us. And then it hasn't been slated yet, but sometime in February, we'll have a meeting with Mark McDermott from Forest, Ontario, and kind of go over, I believe, like the seed bank and maybe a few other
Yeah,
topics.
their seed database, a little bit of kind of what they do so far as services for collecting seed, things like that. And like if you guys have any other questions, we can add it to the list for him to address, but there's obviously going to be time for open questions and things as well. But
It might be good to bring up maybe if there was ever restoration projects that you guys didn't have within your current program, there might be funding opportunities through them. I don't know if that's of interest with anybody, but there could be something there as well.
yeah, variety of things, and they're doing a lot more planting a little bit farther in the north too. They've expanded their programs, so yeah, open there for whatever people want to kind of discuss. But just a few other updates. White pine seeds that's at Ferguson has obviously been done for quite a while, but the stuff at Somerville, they've had a few delays. I've been assured they will have the final results to me fairly soon. Initial results right now, like the testing isn't fully done, but they're looking pretty good. Like they're going to land above 90 so far. So just a bit of an update there, and I guess a bit of a reminder for folks who have invoices on the docket to pay if there's an issue, like let us know with that. But I know Chelsea had given me a bit of an update that we're still waiting on some folks there for that. And a quick update, just sort of far as Barb Boyson out on the keeping her eyes peeled wherever she goes, was out doing some work in Eastern Ontario recently and found in some plantations that were kind of being thinned, and found some really good potential for red pine next year. So just everybody keep your eyes out, I guess. So let's just do with that what you will. Whether that's, I don't know how far widespread that might be, but just that we let you guys know if you guys want to keep your eyes open for red pine in the east there. It might be a reasonable crop this next year.
Are you guys, sorry, Kristen, are you guys looking in the south at all for that? You got eyes on the ground in the south for some of the seed zones that you might dip into?
We've talked about this, and then well, I guess this brings up the whole, I don't know if anybody has heard of the squirrel PRT push that has occurred lately for looking for red pine. They had a big contract out across a number of different US states and including Ontario. I don't know how successful they were with that, but and I mean, they had at one point in time kind of requested a bit of assistance from us, and we had discussed a little bit that we kind of need to support you guys first. But it's a conversation I've had and we've had with how we could maybe collaborate with some other people, and especially down where I am too. There's a lot of red pine that's coming out because people are kind of, it's not native, and a lot of their bush lots, their priorities are just wildlife, and so there's a lot of red pine coming out in places. So it's something we've talked a little bit about of how we could maybe try and coordinate something to look for red pine seed and maybe take advantage of where people are clearing out plantations and things if we could collect seed. It's been on my mind how that actually functions and who exactly we work with and how we fund that. But yeah, if that's something that anybody wants to discuss a little bit further with some of the southern areas outside of your guys' kind of main areas, we can definitely, if folks are interested in that, we could have kind of a discussion about kind of pursuing that.
Yeah, Barry, we've talked to a couple folks like, Graham Davis out of Simcoe County Forest and some of the other county foresters, that would be doing work in there and just sort of coordinating things with them. We've been successful at getting some red pine seed out of their sort of good stands because they're planted, but they're proven performance planted, that coinciding with some of their harvests. So there's definitely potential to do that kind of work. But if you're talking about like eyes at the ground for seed forecasting, yeah, we've got people kind of all over the place that tend to look. But if we want to do it if we're seeing what we're seeing, like Barb was mentioning out east, then this sort of just puts the notice in our head to look at it a little bit more closely whenever we're out. So it's just if you're felling, if you're dropping red pine right now, look at the tops, see if there's potential in your area, and then we can encourage people to do the same in other areas. Because right now it's just potential. We know that red pine does get affected quite a bit by bugs.
Yeah,
So.
bugs and stuff, but the fact that there was so much flowering is a good sign, right? Because some of the stuff has just been there hasn't been seed fill in recent years. So I mean, yeah, again, potential, don't know how widespread it is, but just something that Barb had kind of clued us into when she was out there. So yeah.
Yeah, up here in Nipissing, like we are overdue for a red pine crop. So we're sort of under the assumption we'll get one in the next year or two. We haven't started looking at flowers yet or anything. One big issue for us is like our seed banks are getting low, and we don't have any certified pickers. I think we have one left. So that's an issue.
Yeah, and that's also why we've talked about like maybe doing something that was a bit more of a coordinated effort if we could. But yeah, I mean, we have to find the right people and where there's an area where there is a good crop to sort of make it worthwhile. But yeah, this is something if everybody is kind of interested, we can kind of keep our ears open a little bit more and maybe talk a little bit more about pursuing something in that realm.
Okay.
Liz? Liz, I don't know whether I'm not hearing you. Is anybody else hearing Liz? Yeah.
You're not needed.
Is this better?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Except that I can't hear you now. It's
Oh,
fine.
no.
Okay, now I'm good. I'm good now.
Okay.
I guess it begs the question, so if we get a bumper year, which would be great, where would we send all of those cones for extraction? And if we dump them all on Maureen, she'd say thank you and punch us in the face at the same time. So is just a question, I guess, to the group, where are folks sending all of their seed if we anticipate something that's coming around the corner?
Yeah, I think it depends on where, right? Like it's probably going to be whichever one of the three nurseries that has sort of the closest proximity to. Like Liz out your way, I know with Marine, and I know some of its capacity. That's always like when we're collecting from the orchards, we have the capacity question. With the nurseries, I mean, which I know we've kind of filled a good percentage of their capacity some years when we've had white pine, but if white pine is like having an off year and red pine's having a bigger year and red pine takes up a little bit less space than white pine, I'm thinking we'll probably be okay. We'd probably want to confirm that with the nurseries, but
So a good idea to check with the nursery to see before you throw out any contracts out to a cone collector if we have enough.
yeah,
how many cones to pick?
Yeah, I have a feeling like if we're talking about like 10, 20 hectoliters, it's probably okay. But if you're talking about hundreds of hectoliters, then I think you're getting into the territory of you really got to have a serious conversation with the nurseries.
Yeah, I think when last year Maureen had about 250 hectoliters or something there, and she had a bit more space yet still. So they've got quite a bit of space, especially like red pine. You're probably not going to get near, if you could get 10 hectoliters of red pine, you're doing well. That's one thing I was going to mention there. Andy had talked about the lack of cone collectors. And one of the things that I learned last year from, we collected about 8 hectoliters of red pine last year, is the price we're paying for red pine is low. It's really hard from the way, we rented boom lifts, we collected from tops, we collected from squirrel caches, and it's all pretty, cost us probably on average about $500 a hectoliter with our own staff to do it, compared to the white pine, which was about half of that. So that's something that I'll be looking at, I think, going forward, is the price that we're paying for red pine.
And that 250 hectoliters, Tom, that you sent that to Ferguson?
I think, I'm pretty sure, I'm kind of going off the cuff there, but I didn't send that much there. But between, like, FGCA had a lot there, and
Okay.
we had about 40 hectoliters, and then they weren't full last year, and like last year was a bumper crop. They were starting to get full, and they have enough. I think they'd run out of trays maybe before they run out of space, kind of thing. But they had quite a bit of space. But yeah, Maureen would know exactly how much, but it was quite a bit that they had.
Okay.
That would be an interesting conversation about the pricing though too, Tom. Like, I know you guys do it yourselves, and even hearing something from Picker that's been doing it for years, it's just to kind of give you a glimpse of what is involved, which many of you I'm sure would respect, and some of you may already know, but so that you can better evaluate what it's worth. Because I mean, we reference the prices that are out there now were from a price list from the seed plant that was only increased slightly, not with inflation. So it's kind of a hard unit of measure at this point in time versus sort of reevaluating that. But we also don't want to get into some kind of crazy rat race against each other, trying to, go for stuff. So, I don't know, that would be an interesting discussion to talk about pricing, what the stuff is worth, and then you guys make your sort of decisions from there. But
And a question I had for you, Carrie, is do you guys keep a list of your certified cone collectors that you have that we can access if we were looking around?
yeah, so I think we would circulate out to everybody, just, okay, so and so is interested, here's their contact information, and if you wanted to be more specific about what you were particularly looking for annually and stuff, then share your contact information, and we'd be happy to connect with people that way. We can't hand over the list, unfortunately, because of the information collection, but we'd be happy to facilitate it. And once I
Yeah,
get
yeah.
go for it.
We're happy
Great.
to share information, like especially I would say some of the minimum things is like what species are you looking for, general quantities, and like areas that you're looking for, and we can kind of send that out to our list of people.
Excellent.
We're currently transitioning it to a little bit of a better way that we can hopefully target to, that we just kind of pull people based on where they are to indicate it versus sending out to the whole list. But yeah, we have the ability to reach out to folks if you need.
Awesome. Thank you.
I guess just moving a little bit beyond that, I'm not sure how much we've maybe talked about it. So the FGCA is doing quite a bit of work on black ash right now, with recovery and some other projects and research and things like that. And I think at some point in time, we were hoping probably Heather might talk to the group a little bit about black ash, but I just kind of wanted a little bit of a preemptive thing out to the group, a little bit about your guys' thoughts on black ash. If you guys have issues with black ash, you have concerns, things that we can potentially do to support you folks with regards to black ash, or whether it's not a concern at all. Yeah, I think just kind of putting it out there if anybody kind of has some preemptive thoughts about black ash. Silence.
I feel like we've had so many discussions about this with so many people, and I know that you guys, your work is under the exemption now, but we are talking to a lot of people whose work is not under the exemption, um, that are having a hard time with the listing, and so yeah, I mean, we as an organization, like, one thing is we want to make sure we're supporting you folks however we should. We're also interested in working sort of in the southern part of our province on recovery where populations are limited or decimated entirely. So that's the kind of, we're trying to work in both realms. So yeah, I think Heather is our director of species conservation, so she oversees our butternut and now black ash initiative, and so to have her and her program coordinator sort of in here to chat with you guys and sort of gauge your interests, dissatisfactions, kind of everything, data sets or anything information that you have, I think that would be really helpful for them to make sure that when they're in conversations with the MECP, they have a bit of a perspective of what you guys are dealing with. So I think that's all they're doing. They're looking to get some discussion going and also give you a debrief on what we've done so far, kind of keep you in the know. So
Terry Berry here. So I'm assuming they're kind of what they're foot forward that they're putting is consistent with the whole M&R industry messaging that led to us having the exemption, and ideally I've read contradicting things. So who's the competent individuals? I sat in on the tree marking refresher in the spring, and they were saying that certified tree markers weren't on the list, and there should be some, people should advocate for that. I mean, there's other people on the list that have probably less credentials really when it comes to it than certified tree markers. And I read somewhere else that they might have been on the list, so I'm not clear on that. But anyways, just that messaging should be consistent, and that they're not kind of putting something out there that could have everybody revisit. Hey, well, if that's the case, we need to revisit the whole discussions that led us to the exemption in the first place.
yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. So yeah, hopefully when you get a little bit more information from us as to what the work what we've done so far. Right now it's more about finding in areas where the populations have been reduced significantly, it's finding lingering individuals. Those lingering individuals, similar to our work with butternut, and what people have done in the US is finding, characteristics that they may be more tolerant or more resistant to the EAB. And so then you capture those genetics if they exist anymore. So that's what we're being informed. We're being informed by folks in the US who've kind of been through this for at least a decade longer than we have, and sort of learning from them. But then again, we have to make sure we're, it's a different geography, it's a different scale of how this is impacting things, and then we still have healthy populations in large numbers. So anyway, so I'm not telling you what they're going to say, but we do want to, I think we want to connect with you guys on that particular topic, if that's good, if you're okay with it. I guess that's number one question. Like, would you be okay with us sort of bringing that element to one of our meetings?
Personally, I'd be interested, Carrie, and on the Chalk River site there is some black ash stands, and we would be looking at some recovery strategies or restoration strategies that they're very interested in that. So I'd be interested for sure.
Liz, you don't have to. Is that like, you wouldn't be exempt? Is that correct?
It's federal lands.
Okay, so yeah, you're not. Okay, it's not federalism. Okay. Okay.
Any other thoughts on black ash? Probably not too much.
Not so much black ash per se, but when the discussion was about lingering individuals, it brought me back to beech bark disease. And, we had the presentation many moons ago there that research in the States basically building brush fences around their some of their work they'd done. But I think I'm getting pretty close to the point in some stands where, kind of more aftermath forest where, 95% or 99% of the beech is dead or almost dead sort of thing. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering what we should be doing with those odd trees that aren't showing signs that may just been, I suspect a lot of them just got lucky and was able to, outgrow or whatever. But it also makes me wonder, is there something we should be tying into some of the research that's happened in the state showing that somewhere 1 to 3% resistance? Not that I'm going to have a beech planting project anytime soon, but, is that something that we should start looking at? Because up until now, more or less, it's like, hey, it's too soon because this thing's still wiping through.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like beech in particular, obviously they have found resistance and they have resistant orchards in the US. And I mean that's something that we can again always have the conversation about how the value to you guys, whether like say we pursued work like that. Because yeah, I mean I assume there's gonna be lingering ones on the landscape that are resistant, but yeah, Barry, you have to kind of they either have to be tested in an orchard or you have to wait so long that everything else is dead before you can kind of pick those ones out. But that would also be obviously like a program in and of itself to support
Absolutely. So
orchards
I'm
for
not
resistant shock.
suggesting we start setting things up, but maybe having a peak, whether that's this year or within 5 years that we should, because, at least in our forest, and I expect in Bancroft, Minden, and Mazenau, they have areas that it's been around for long enough and it's done enough damage in stands that maybe we should start thinking about it, not actually actions.
Yeah, well, and I mean with the positive research that came out of the US, right? That it's like if you do have a population at least of a few that are resistant, and those are the only ones that are breeding with each other, 50% of the offspring being potentially resistant, that's a pretty positive thing, like even just management within the landscape, which I understand obviously complexity of issues of trying to remove all beech that are not resistant before that kind of happens, and then whether you have enough of a population of resistant trees close enough to cross-pollinate and support that. But that might be like a site-specific thing in an area that you have a ton of beech, and there might be enough of a few that are resistant that you can do some things on the landscape.
It may be neat
But
though to consider like a project that we could potentially get funding for through Forestry Futures is getting somebody from that program up, Barry. And I'm sure you've had people there, kind of at the beginning of this and during the management of it, but that might be able to be something that we can facilitate, is getting some of those folks sort of up here to take a look, if you thought that would be valuable.
Well, I find it's one of those things I'm still ticked with the Ministry of Natural Resources. Any given day, there's something you can be ticked about, but this one has been lingering for years now. That except for some Trevor Jones work that kind of went to Eric Searle, and God bless those guys for doing what they do. As a whole, the ministry has pretty much completely turned its back on something that's killing tens of thousands of trees, highly ecologically valuable trees across our landscape, threatening long-term sustainability of mature, closed canopy tolerant hardwoods. So yeah, it was what, 2000 and I don't know, 15 or 16, or I forget when it was. We had a workshop where we brought people up, and now we didn't have any of the genetics people, I don't believe, because we weren't anywhere near yet. We're still we're still at the place where a large majority of forestry experts or authorities were going, don't worry about it, it'll go away. It won't be that bad. Just keep a diverse forest and all will be good. And I think most of us have seen that obviously it's not the case and is in keeping with lots of things we're seeing in the States. So yeah, that's, it's a long-term sort of situation that, action not within the next year or two or 3 or 4 maybe, but it's always you look back and go, geez, I wish I had looked into that a few years ago. And I don't know if we're there yet. Folks with more knowledge and brains than I do may be able to figure that out, but I'm just raising that as maybe we should consider it.
Yeah, and I mean, if some of the trouble is like this is where like, you know, we have money to support black ash because it's been listed. And we're kind of stuck in this position when something's not listed. Where does the funding come for that? And I mean, there's a certain amount that whether it's from our trees genetically or, kind of bypassing the 15, 20 years to build our own program. If there was in theory, if we had money, we could get resistant stock from the US, plant it here, start an orchard and have seed, in a few years' time to plant out that was resistant stock. But
Again, so that's not, I don't think we should get ahead ourselves with that. And I think Carrie said that's, there's a conversation and bring somebody up. And if there's a funding issue with that, we can talk internally about some of those funding issues. Because I don't think it'd be that much. You could probably bring somebody up for a few $1,000s. It's not a big ticket item.
mm-hmm.
For something that's devastating our forest,
Yeah.
we'll find a way of making that work before we start talking about the huge costs of creating orchards.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree. And for someone, I'd love to have an update or some additional or new information because beech bark disease has just arrived at the PRF, for example. So I'm what 10 years behind Barry. So if there's something that we've learned in the last 10 years that I can incorporate somehow, I'd love to know that.
Yeah, and I think like there's talks we've had like before the one that we supported a while ago that was a little bit more about sort of what they found with the resistance and the research. But I'm assuming what you guys are more like somebody who on the silviculture side of how they're managing it in situ. Yeah.
So at last week's provincial health update, excuse me, there was pretty well zero discussion or update on beech bark disease. We've already talked more about it at this meeting than we did last week provincially. So I'm not sure what's happening provincially about beech bark disease.
We should have some sort of operational science unit from M&R somewhere in southern or central Ontario.
Barry, you always bring that up.
I think we're at our timeline here. Are we?
Okay.
Yeah, I know we're kind of past time here. We still had kind of the general roundtable. I know we ended up talking about a lot of things that might have ended up in the roundtable a little bit, but yeah, if anybody has to go, that's okay. But if people want to stay on a little bit longer, then we can definitely still continue with that roundtable. And a couple of things, just reminders on that. We had sort of the SFL, just your updates. And also if anybody had comments on the new M&R tech specs, or if anybody's attended that forest policy transfer session. Tom, I know you guys were going. And if there's any sort of new meeting topics, sounds like beach, something a little bit more management silvicultural wise for beech bark disease, but yeah. Anybody want to start, or Colin can maybe pick people out?
Yeah. Yeah, Tom, would you mind?
Sure. My fall has been extremely chaotic, and I had to back out of that policy transfer thing last minute in the end. So I think there's another one an online one that I'm going to try and do in a couple of weeks. So I think there may have been some other folks there. I don't know that it necessarily pertains a lot to genetics. It's just some changes in the to annual work schedules, annual reports. I don't know if there was anything relating to like, tracking our seed or anything like that. I'm not too sure.
We
Okay.
were talking to Tara Petite, and I think getting connected with Denny Gagnon on some of the tech specs for the AR3 table. I'm thinking, Todd. I guess that's the seed source table that we might be talking to them a little bit about that. Which they said they would engage it. And when I say we, I'm talking about the three genetic associations. So FGCA, Superior Woods, and NASMA. Just to see what we might recommend. That's it that I know of. But I don't think the tech specs were a part of that discussion, right? It was just the manual, or was it the tech specs? Not sure. Okay.
Anybody else?
Colin, I would just call around the room.
Call around. Okay.
Point them out. Volunteer.
What about
Not to put Peter on the spot, but I was chatting with him yesterday, and I don't know if he wanted to talk at all about HRI and their new machine there.
Yeah, so I had Jack McDonald stop by here the other day, and apparently he's buying this machine called a Plantma. It's from Scandinavia, and it's the combination of like a disc trencher and this enclosed cab machine on the back that has two robotic arms that plants the trees. So, and he wants to do a presentation about it to kind of show us all what it is, because apparently this machine's like a few $1,000,000, and I don't know. I'm interested in seeing it. He's actually already bought it and it's going to show up. So he kind of wants to make a pitch to all of us that like this is what he thinks planting is going to be in the future, more mechanized kind of thing. So I don't know. I see the potential value in it. He said the associated cost is it's relatively comparable to what you have with just regular tree planters, boots on the ground, still in your neighborhood of 35 to 45 cents a tree. So that's kind of what makes me want to entertain the idea of at least seeing his presentation, because the cost is relatively the same for us at the end of the day. So I don't know if that's something everybody else here would be interested in seeing. This is what I can post a link in the chat. This is that link there is kind of a bit, you can find some information about the Plantma machine if you'd like to look into it more yourselves.
Well, if you have him demoing it on your forest, if you could just let us know when that is, I'm sure if we're available, we'd love to come down and see it, just to see what's going on.
He has a PowerPoint presentation, like a bit of like a Zoom meeting kind of presentation he'd like to put on. And like I'm gonna get him to do it for myself. So if anybody would like to join that meeting, whenever, I can set it up so everybody can join if they'd like to see his presentation. So
yeah, we'll just send it out to the gang there, and I'm sure any of us who are available would love to join up. Just always good to see what's going on out there.
Yeah, Andre, do you have any updates for us?
No, nothing much. It's been a crazy fall here too.
Okay.
So yeah, we've been pounding away there, but yeah. In terms of topics, like yeah, I think this beach one is a good one. And the black ash one, but be glad to help out with or participate in that as well. I can't think of anything right now. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the meeting there. I was really keen to see it, but I had another thing going on. But I'm sure Andy will give me an update. Andy, did you have anything you wanted to talk about here?
Yeah, I think I already mentioned it earlier, just about the lack of collectors we have up this way, and mentioned too, like we are expecting cone crops in the next year or two. We just would like to be ready for it, but I just have a suspicion that we're not going to be ready for it just with the lack of collectors. A lot of them do collect from squirrel cash. So that was one thing off the top of my head earlier.
And anybody else? Mindy, do you have anything?
Hey, yeah, not too much. It's been a pretty good fall for us. I guess the only thing kind of seed related that's been going on is I had a guy from the Ontario Woodlot Association. His name was Elliot, and he was interested in looking at some red pine collecting on our forest. And so I sent him to a red pine harvest that was happening up near Lake St. Peter. So it was like a pretty nice red pine plantation thinning that we were doing. And yeah, I guess unfortunately he went in there and did some cut tests and that type of thing and didn't have any luck at all. So that was kind of a bummer. I was kind of hoping that a little bit more would come from it, but wasn't to be. And as always, at Bancroft Minden, we're interested in beach bark disease. I'm kind of like losing my enthusiasm towards chemical beach tending, just with the incredible expense and just the labor associated with it. So if we're bringing beach back around, I'll try to bump up my level of enthusiasm around it. But black ash is interesting. I think that's an interesting topic just to learn more about. I mean, it's generally not a tree that we harvest. It's in those wet areas. So yeah, I don't know. I'm interested, but that's about it for me.
Okay, thank you. How about Sean? Do you have anything?
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yes, something somewhat related to trees is next week. Got to entertain an invite from Nick Buda, who's involved. He's a provincial silvicultural coordinator for the province. Interested to just kind of start the conversation or just explore a little bit about AFA's SEM program and kind of our experience to date, and getting into some areas where M&R and AFA are on the same page as far as what the free to grow forest unit is, but just learn through the method that just have some differences there. So he kind of wants to have a little look and learn a little bit more. So we'll see how that goes. That's about it there, I guess, as far as something new that's developing.
Okay, thank you. And Margaret, how about you?
Yeah, not a whole lot seed related. Recently been out doing some beach bark disease surveying and such, but nothing all that new for the group.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I guess if that's everything, I will make sure I get the minutes out to everybody and include Seedtek's information on there as well, and keep you updated for the next meeting.
All right. Thanks a lot, Colin.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm going to stop the recording now.